What if it were true that nature does speak in symbols and signs, hidden meanings? And that the secret to understanding nature's language consists in noticing similarities in shapes and forms? What if it's true? What if nature actually places inside of us a coded message that is somehow cosmic DNA communicating with our physical DNA, and we start to know things? It says scientists are shedding light on the biggest power booster on our planet. The biggest power booster on our planet is light from above that touches chlorophyll and hemoglobin. Chlorophyll in plants, hemoglobin in human beings. Green light. Okay? We learned from this material chlorophyll converts light energy into something called ATP. ATP is in both plants and human beings. Actually, it is the hemoglobin in humans, which is complementary to chlorophyll in plants. ATP is the source of energy for living cells in plants and in humans and in animals. And ATP is a direct result of light from above interacting with either chlorophyll or hemoglobin, interacting with green. So it's green light which is actually responsible for ATP. And ATP is the immediate source of energy for muscle contraction. In other words, you couldn't move unless there's ATP, and there's no ATP unless there's green light, light interacting with the green of the earth. So the hemigroup in humans is related to the chlorophyll in plants, and through light touching both, there is the source of energy for all life. And that's what's very interesting. Without the photosystem, now the photosystem is green light. Without the photosystem, molecules, life as we know it, would cease to exist. So how important is green light? Without it, there's none of anybody. Okay. Now again, very important for where we're going. Just as in human cells, the photosystem, proteins, that's the green light, inside a plant cell are translated from amino acids. These amino acids are in turn translated from the complex array of nucleic acids in DNA. The description of the molecular code reads like an encrypted message. Okay? Now, what's interesting about that is the nucleic acid is the product of green light. The green light is an angle of light. It's a photon, which the Bible says is an angel of light. The angle of light as a photon is a messenger particle. The angel in the Bible is a messenger. And so here now we find that there's a direct connection between the angle of light, or the messenger, and an encrypted message called DNA. So you see how everything is conveyed in symbols. Even you, it's an encrypted, you're an encrypted, there's a coded message inside of you. Not a plain, there's nothing written on your head or anything. It's all written in cosmic code, really. And so not only inside of you is there an encrypted message that we call DNA. Jesus never spoke but in a symbol. That's what the Bible says. And NASA tells us there's an intelligent message conveyed to all living things in a molecular code which reads like an encrypted message. Okay. Isn't it encrypted? You know what an encrypted message is? It's code. It's like Morse code, you know. And that's what it is. Now it is important, because you're going to hear today from an anthropologist by the name of Dr. Jeremy Narby. And what you're going to hear from him is critical as we consider what NASA says. And I read it before, but I'll read it again because it's important. Just as in human cells, the photosystem, that's the green light, inside a plant cell are translated from amino acids. Amino acids have a 20-letter alphabet for each of the 20 naturally occurring amino acids. These acids are in turn translated from the complex array of nucleic acids in DNA codes as the letters A, G, T, C. A description of the molecular code reads like an encrypted message. So the message is connected to the green light. So somehow, now I don't know how, I'll never know how, but somehow light entering the Earth on an angle, a messenger particle, a photon, angles of light, messenger particles, somehow NASA finds that as this light touches chlorophyll and humans, it sets up a complex activity from amino acids into DNA, and the encrypted intelligent message is given to all living things. An intelligent message. I mean, the cat gets an intelligent message depending on what the cat needs. The elephant gets an encrypted message depending on what the elephant needs. You and I get an encrypted message depending on what we need. So the message comes from angles of light, from green light. Now, there was a fellow by the name of Dr. Jeremy Narby. And Jeremy Narby is an anthropologist who was baccalaureate, received his laureate degrees and all this from Stanford University. Extremely prestigious, extremely scientific, not given to any hocus pocus or any of this stuff. But anyhow, this is what he says. The spirits one sees in hallucinations are made of their own language like DNA. And then he asks a question. Is DNA linked to the cosmic serpents from around the world? Now this gets very interesting, and I'll tell you why. It started out in 1984. Dr. Narby was in a place called Curishari in the Peruvian Amazon Valley, in the middle of the jungle. That's what these anthropologists do, you know. But he was struck by something that changed his whole approach. He was a very, very scientific, pragmatic guy. As he sat around the fire in the middle of the jungle, he sat around with the shaman, bushman, and he was talking to this guy. And this guy said that most diseases he could cure. He said he learned about the medicinal properties of plants by drinking a hallucinogenic brew. So you can say, you know, Narby sitting there listening to this guy. The guy said, yeah, I can heal all this stuff. How do you understand all of these things? Oh, I drink this stuff. He claimed he could cure the bite of a deadly snake, but he said one learns these things by drinking ayahuasca, Ayahuasca. And Dr. Narby said, when he said that to me, he wasn't smiling. Now, the question that was spinning around in Narby's head was, did the information about all of this healing and understanding the molecular structure of these things, did the information come from the brain as the result of the hallucination? Or was the hallucination actually a message from the plant? In other words, was the DNA from the plant conversing with the DNA in the brain? I mean, basically, what is getting popular in this very advanced scientific country is the very same stuff that this guy in the middle of the Amazon jungle has been giving out to people for years. But how did he find out about it? Healing agencies that actually come from green light. This is what Narby had to deal with. People living in the middle of the Amazon forest insisted that their extensive botanic knowledge of healing came from plant-induced hallucinations. And Narby then took off on his career of saying, how in the world could this possibly be true? Isn't it reminiscent of the question that we talked about of Plato and Pythagoras and all of these guys? How could people thousands of years ago know about quantum physics, electrons, and nuclear energy? Who taught them? And here Dr. Narby asks, how could shamans in the middle of the Amazon jungle know about the molecular properties in plants and the art of combining them? Who told them? Where did they get it from? How is it possible? And see, of course, we look at them and say, well, we're the civilized people, we have drugs. They're, bush people, they don't know. But now suddenly we're starting to use the same thing they were doing. Now listen to the science involved here. When you think, people in the middle of the jungle, no schools, no universities, no medicine, no doctors, no nothing, but this guy sitting around a fire said, what do you got, I'll cure you. Try to consider how these people in the middle of the Amazon jungle could do this. The green plant here is called ayahuasca. These people have used the brew for ages. The interesting point, according to Dr. Narby, is that in order for this thing to work, you must combine two plants which must be boiled together for hours. The first contains hallucinogenic substance called DMT, which seems also, according to Dr. Narby, to say this stuff is also secreted by the brain, the human brain. But this hallucinogenic has no effect whatsoever when swallowed because there's a stomach enzyme that blocks it, so it can't work. The second plant that they have to put in and boil with it, however, has substances that inactivate the precise stomach enzyme, allowing this hallucinogenic to reach the brain. So out of the billions and billions and billions of plants and trees and all of this stuff, somehow they found this and realized that in order for this to work, they had to combine it with this, because the stomach enzyme that would stop this is destroyed by this, and so then the hallucinogenic can work. Now they knew that. And this really fascinated Narby. He said, how in God's name could they know that? Somehow out of all the green in the Amazon, they found the plant with a hallucinogenic brain hormone and combined it with a vine that inactivated the enzyme of the digestive tract, which would have otherwise blocked the effect. And they do this for the express purpose of modifying or changing their consciousness. The molecular properties of plants and the art of combining them. When one asks them how they know these things, they say that their knowledge comes directly from the plants. The plants tell them. A message then is conveyed to them from the green plants. This is what I want you to concentrate on. An intelligent message that comes from the outside to the inside and communicates somehow in a coded way that is decoded by the brain. This is how it occurs. What is coming from the outside can enter the body, as it does with these people, and when it enters the body, an intelligent conversation takes place between DNA that came in and DNA that's in. And so then a change happens to the body. A change happens to consciousness. A change happens to intelligence. So Narby arrived at an initial conclusion, and he put it this way. Their knowledge was undeniable. They're healing people. They're treating diseases by stuff that doctors and hospitals all know nothing about, other than the fact that they do this, and this works. Their knowledge was undeniable, he says, but their explanations concerning the origin of their knowledge was unbelievable to me. That's what he said. My attitude was ambivalent. On the one hand, I wanted to understand what they thought about the reality of spirits. But on the other, I couldn't take seriously what they said because I did not believe it. Not unlike what we were talking about, the ancient Greeks. They have the knowledge, they prove that, but how in the world did they get it? I mean, Democritus had the knowledge about the electrons and how an electron moves out of its orbit inside of an atom, but how did he get that information? Where did he get it from? And so then you have these people who are doing this stuff and concocting all, now this is just one thing, concocting all of these different herbs and all these different things and giving them to people and treating diseases. How did they get this information from? Because in order to do that, they have to know how the body works, and then they have to know the molecular structure of the medicine they're putting together. I mean, they're mixing medicine just like you do in the drugstore across the street, only they're doing it in the middle of the jungle. It's the same thing, but it's from the earth. How do they know that? Scientists can verify the molecular structure of what they're using and the molecular structure of the body. Say, hey, we can verify they're right on. But what the scientists are having trouble with is because the people that are using this stuff and are right on are saying, the plants tell us how to do this. These people are saying that by taking this stuff, they're getting a message. That what is in the stuff that they're taking is an encrypted message coming from green light. Narby says, what could I say to them? There's nothing one can say without contradicting two fundamental principles of Western knowledge. One, hallucinations cannot be the source of information. Western knowledge considers hallucinations to be at the best illusion and at the worst morbid phenomena. Number two, plants do not communicate like human beings. Only human beings use abstract symbols like words and pictures, and plants do not relay information in the form of mental images. That's what we thought. And this is what Narby said. It had become clear to me that these people were somehow gaining access in their visions to verifiable information about plant properties. In other words, they were hallucinating from these plants, and during the hallucination, they were gaining verifiable information that could be verified by a university or a prestigious drug firm. And they were getting it by swallowing plants. The DNA from the outside, which is an encrypted message, comes and communicates with the DNA on the inside, and something changes. So in his book, The Cosmic Serpent, Narby first had to look at this scientifically. And he says, the similarity between the molecular profiles of natural hallucinogens, plants, I find to be consistent with that which is in the brain called serotonin. It seemed well and truly to indicate that both the hallucinogenic plant that these people were talking about and serotonin are like keys that fit into the same lock inside of the human brain. In other words, what he's saying is that the stuff from the plants is comfortable and fits into the lock of consciousness in the same way as a natural brain substance, which is called serotonin. So he took the next step. And this is where Narby decided, this is what I've got to do. He did the same thing that Carl Jung did. You remember what Carl Jung did? Carl Jung had all of these people coming who were totally whacked out. And they were seeing all of these crazy things. And he couldn't figure out what in God's name are you talking about. So he had to open a bottle and take it. And actually consume it. And they said to Dr. Jung, you are a prestigious psychoanalyst. What are you doing to yourself? He said, how in God's name am I going to understand these people if I don't experience what they're experiencing? And he did. Narby said the same thing. He was reaching a point where to understand what these people were experiencing and saying, he took hallucinogenics. This is a distinguished anthropologist from Stanford University in California. And when he took them and had the experience, it led him to disagree with the scientific position that hallucinations are merely discharges of images stocked and stacked in the subconscious. I was convinced, he said, that the enormous fluorescent snakes that I had seen thanks to ayahuasca did not correspond in any way to anything that I could have dreamed of, even in my most extreme nightmares. And before you worry too much about those snakes, remember what the snake is: DNA.